Friends, gather round. Today I have a story that will make you question the very fabric of international relations and economic strategies. It's a tale that involves not just nations, but the very essence of power and leverage in the modern world. Let me tell you a tale of international intrigue, economic warfare, and one very big tariff. This isn't just any tariff. It's a move that shook the foundations of global trade and had ripple effects far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. Picture this. April 2nd, 2025. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and Donald J. Trump, tweeter-in-chief, is busy slapping a 25% import tax on all things automotive coming in from Mexico. This wasn't just a random act, it was a calculated move, a chess piece in a much larger game. He calls it Liberation Day, most people just call it Tuesday. But for those in the automotive industry and international trade, it was a day that would be remembered for its far-reaching consequences. Now you might be thinking, Stephen, why all the fuss over a few cars? Well, it's not just about the cars themselves. It's about what they represent in the grand scheme of things. Well, my friends, this wasn't just about cars, this was about power, leverage, the ability to bend another nation to your will through economic pressure. It was a bold move, one that had the potential to reshape the dynamics between two neighboring countries. A big, beautiful wall of tariffs designed to force Mexico's hand on immigration. Or so the Donald thought. He envisioned a scenario where Mexico would have no choice but to comply with his demands, thinking that economic pressure would be the ultimate trump card. See, Trump's been on this whole build the wall kick for years. It was a cornerstone of his political identity, a promise he made to his supporters, and a symbol of his stance on immigration. But Mexico, those proud hombres and mujeres, they weren't too keen on footing the bill for his concrete fantasy. They had their own national pride and economic interests to consider, and they weren't about to be strong-armed into submission. So, what does any rational, level-headed world leader do? Threaten their economy with crippling tariffs, of course. The markets trembled, automakers panicked, the ripple effects were felt across industries and borders, creating a wave of uncertainty and fear. And in the White House, a triumphant Trump probably did a little victory dance, his hair swaying like a golden wheat field in a hurricane. He believed he had the upper hand, that his bold move would force Mexico to capitulate. Little did he know Mexico had a surprise up its sleeve. They weren't going to take this lying down. They had their own strategies, their own ways of countering the economic pressure. The stage was set for a showdown, a clash of wills that would test the resilience and ingenuity of both nations. While Trump was busy tweeting about winning his latest political battles and rallying his supporters with promises of making America great again, Mexico was quietly strategizing behind the scenes, much like a grandmaster in a high-stakes chess game. And by chess, I mean they decided to fight fire with, well, fire. But not in the literal sense, of course, not literal fire, mind you. That would be irresponsible and chaotic. Instead, they opted for a more sophisticated approach. No, Mexico's weapon of choice was far more cunning extradition. A legal and diplomatic maneuver that caught everyone by surprise. Remember those drug cartel kingpins the U.S. has been after for years? The ones who have eluded capture and justice for so long? The ones with names that sound like Bond villains? Characters so notorious that their very mention sends shivers down the spine? Yeah, Mexico decided to send them packing, gift-wrapped and delivered straight to American justice. It was a move that no one saw coming. We're talking big fish here, folks. The kind of criminals who have been at the top of the most wanted lists for years. Rafael Caro Quintero, the Guadalajara cartel boss linked to the murder of DEA agent Kiki Camarena. His capture was a significant victory. Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, the Juarez cartel head honcho, another major player taken off the streets. Even Omar and Miguel Trevino Morales, the notoriously brutal Zetas cartel leaders. Their reign of terror finally brought to an end. All extradited, just as Trump's tariffs kicked in. It was a masterstroke of timing and diplomacy. Now, was this a coincidence? A gesture of goodwill? Or perhaps a strategic move to gain favor with the U.S. administration? Or a calculated power move designed to throw Trump off balance? The timing certainly suggests a deeper strategy at play. I'll let you be the judge. But it's clear that Mexico's actions were both bold and decisive. But one thing's for sure, it was a bold move. A move that demonstrated Mexico's willingness to take strong action. And it was just the beginning. This extradition surprise marked a new chapter in the complex relationship between the U.S. and Mexico, one that promises to be filled with more unexpected twists and turns. The news of the extraditions hit Mexico like a shot of tequila on an empty stomach. People were outraged, not because they loved the cartels, mind you, but because they hated being bullied by their northern neighbor. From the bustling streets of Mexico City to the beaches of Cancun, a wave of anti-Trump sentiment washed over the country. Millions took to the streets, waving Mexican flags, chanting slogans, and generally letting their displeasure be known. Politicians from all sides denounced Trump's tariffs as an attack on Mexican sovereignty. Economists warned of dire consequences for both countries. And even the usually reserved Mexican press let loose with a torrent of scathing editorials. For the first time in recent memory, Mexicans were united, not by political ideology or social class, but by a shared sense of defiance against a common enemy, Donald J. Trump. Section 4. The world reacts America first? More like America alone. Trump's tariff tantrum didn't just ruffle feathers in Mexico. Oh no, my friends, this was a global affair. The European Union, those sophisticated cheese-eating surrender monkeys, were not amused. Canada, our friendly hat-wearing neighbors to the north, were downright furious. See, tariffs are a double-edged sword. They might protect some domestic industries in the short term, but in the long run, they tend to hurt everyone involved. Prices go up, consumers suffer, and global trade takes a hit. So when Trump started throwing his weight around with tariffs, the rest of the world decided to play hardball too. The EU threatened retaliatory tariffs on American goods from bourbon to blue jeans. Canada, bless their maple syrup-loving hearts, imposed their own tariffs on everything from ketchup to playing cards. Suddenly, America First was starting to look a lot like America alone. Section 5. Counting the cost when tariffs attack, wallets cry. Now let's talk about the real victims in this whole tariff tiff, our wallets. Tariffs might sound like a political or economic strategy, but at the end of the day, they hit us where it hurts the most, our finances. See, when you slap a 25% tax on imported cars, guess what happens? The cost of those cars doesn't just absorb the tax, it gets passed down to the consumer. That's right, the price of cars goes up. And we're not talking about a small increase. We're talking about a significant hike that can make a big dent in your budget. And not just any cars, mind you. This price surge affects all cars, whether they're imported or domestically produced. We're talking about all cars, even the ones made right here in the good old U.S. of A. Why? Because the components and materials used in these cars often come from abroad. Because economics is a fickle mistress, my friends. The interconnected nature of global supply chains means that a tariff on one part can ripple through the entire system. When the cost of production goes up, so do prices. It's a simple equation, but one that has far-reaching consequences. It's supply and demand, baby. When supply is constrained or costs increase, the end price for consumers inevitably rises. And when prices go up, consumers feel it. It's not just a line item on a spreadsheet, it's real money out of your pocket. But it wasn't just the auto industry that got hit. Everyday items that we often take for granted saw price hikes too. Remember those retaliatory tariffs from the EU and Canada? They weren't just political maneuvers, they had real-world impacts. Yeah, those started to bite too. The price of imported cheese, for instance, skyrocketed, making it a luxury rather than a staple. The price of imported cheese skyrocketed. Suddenly that fancy cheese you love became a special occasion treat. Maple syrup became a luxury good. What was once a breakfast staple turned into a pricey indulgence. And don't even get me started on the price of hockey sticks. For families with kids in sports, this was a real blow. The moral of the story? Tariffs might seem like a tool to protect domestic industries, but they often end up hurting the very people they're supposed to help. Trade wars are never easy and they're certainly not cheap. They create a ripple effect that impacts everyone, from manufacturers to consumers. So next time you hear about tariffs, remember, it's not just a political issue, it's a personal one.